get a now this swivels.
Okay.
Just that you should know. So we're going to put it here, and then when you want to go to the screen, Mark, we're going to have you go like that, which is not showing up really well at all.
Right.
Unfortunately.
That's okay.
But what we can do, let me just see if we have our screen now. How come I can't get the cursor? It's not really.
If you put it, I would put it. If you put this or the.
And make sure that it actually is recording.
Let's see if this works.
And see. All right.
Everything.
Hi. Shalom Aleichem. How are you? Okay. So, I think we ought to get it in about a minute or so. Gotta look at my email for your bio. I think we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome you to a series called Fixing the Rambam. It's a 3-part series featuring a new member of our community, Professor Marc Herman, who moved here for the summer with his wife Debbie and their children. And we're delighted to welcome them to the Bayit community and to Thornhill, and especially to Professor Herman's position as associate professor at York, assistant professor, at York University. Marc Herman is an assistant professor at York University in the Department of Humanities. His research focuses on the interactions of Jewish and Islamic intellectual history in the medieval Mediterranean, with a particular interest in the overlapping sacred histories of Jews and Muslims. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, he has held postdoctoral fellowships at Columbia University, Fordham University, Harvard University, the University of Michigan, the University of Pennsylvania, and Yale Law School. And so we're really delighted to be able to welcome the Hermans and especially Marc to the community. As soon as I discovered that Marc was going to be teaching at York, this was his particular area of interest. It happened to be the area of interest that I had studied also at UCLA, and I still am pursuing, medieval Jewish studies, especially in the Islamic world. I got very excited, and I twisted his arm to be able to get to work at helping enhance our own community's education, as well as the York University student education. So I'm really, really delighted that he's agreed to do this for us. I'm grateful. And I look forward to being able to watch the recording of this or listen to the recording of this later, because I have to go teach the Smichas Chaver program. So I wish I could actually be here for this, but I'll have to catch it on the recording later. So Professor Herman, we're delighted that you're here. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you, Rabbi Kropkin. Thank you to Mark Meyerowitz for this. Thank you for organizing the series. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully, we can make this interesting and worthwhile. So, as Rabbi Kropkin mentioned, I'm a historian of the Jews in the Islamic world. Most of my work really focuses not on the material we're talking about tonight, but more on the theorization of the law, how Jews thought about revelation, how they thought about the world around them, and how they constructed that world in light of the rabbinic past and other sort of contemporary inputs from their thinking about God, about revelation, about the rabbis, and those kinds of. So this project, or So how did I get in Rambam's own manuscript? That is what he wrote with his own hand, probably, of the commentary on the Mishnah. Is that, of course, the Rambam is the most systematic and the best preserved thinker that we have from the medieval Islamic world. And as anyone who's familiar in different works, and it's very interesting to compare them, right? Sometimes they'll say the same thing, and that itself is significant. It shows sort of how he's saying totally new, and you can see from that, oh, look, he changed his mind, something. And as I became to realize that each of the Rambam's writings really preserves a different state of his thinking, and I backed into this larger topic of how to think about and how the Rambam worked. How did he write his books? How did he make mistakes in his own mind? How did he fix them? And how did he change his mind and ultimately become the figure that we know and admire? I recently heard a quotation that struck from the French theorist Jacques Derrida. He said when he was studying Aristotle in graduate school, apparently they opened the seminar. What do we know about Aristotle's life? Well, we know that he was born, that he thought, and then he died. Everything else is just details, right? And we sort of have that image sometimes of great rabbis, certainly of the Rishonim, that all we really know about them is that obviously they lived, obviously they produced what they produced, but that's basically it. But lo and behold, we know much more about the Rambam than perhaps we would have realized. Lots of reasons that we'll talk about in the next few weeks. And in light of his proximity to what is known as Cairo Geniza, that is a collection of medieval manuscripts from Cairo, where the Rambam lived the bulk of his life and died. And for other reasons, we really know so much about him. So the goal then, what I hope to do for the next few sessions is to introduce you to these writings, what we can know about the Rambam. So the first thing that we should know is that obviously it is not some great insight of mine or anyone in the 20th century that the Rambam changed his mind, right? If you look, I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between the sources in front of you and the PowerPoint. But obviously, if we look in these are just a few assorted passages from the, right, we can see that the traditional commentaries on the Rambam were well aware that the Rambam changed his mind. Sometimes they had good things about this, and sometimes they didn't. So if you look in source number 1, someone could read this. I don't know. I don't want to do all the talks. It's just in English. Please, yeah.
Of Abraham ben David Raven, that's according to the Ezekiel. It says above you pull the according to Rav, and here like Shmuel. Either way,
of this particular passage in the Mishnah Torah, right? Obviously, the job of the Nosei Kelim, which the commentaries on the Mishnah Torah, is to defend the Rambam and to understand what he's doing. At least, and it's very plausible that at one point the Rambam held one position, and at another time he had a different position. We have a similar, and then the Rambam. Who wants to take source number 2 from Yosef Karo and the Kesef Mishnah, please?
Rabbi Yosef Karo, Kesef Mishnah, Hilchos Kalayim. Our master wrote Yerushalmi like the Ravad, but here he changed his mind because of the Yerushalmi.
Right, so you don't need to know the details of this debate, but basically the Mishnah Torah, we have a debate between the Rambam and his critic, the Ravid, right to page, and the Kesef Mishnah, Yosef Karo, puts out that if you look at the Parasha Mishnah, right, the Mishnah, which the Rambam wrote before the Mishnah Torah, we see that he actually held a different position, and then he came to take what he did, and then he came to change his mind. And even we have again another more general, not written by the person we usually think of as the author of the Maggid Mishnah, but probably somebody else. But he makes a very similar important point. Who wants to take source number 3 for us? Yeah, that doesn't matter.
the Mishnah Torah reflects changes to the Parasha Mishnah.
Right. So we have just another stray comment from the commentaries on Rambam that say, oh, by the way, the Rambam changed his mind a lot of times, right? So this is something that's not a new idea, right? It's very obvious, should be obvious to all of us, if someone is as productive as the Rambam and who, wasn't a stable thinker, someone clearly rethought things over the course of his life, we in fact know that he probably changed his mind and rethought things as he went. In fact,
he didn't go back and correct.
Don't worry, we'll get there. In fact, the first person to note the Rambam changed his mind was none other than the Rambam himself. Right here you see a tshuva from the Rambam, written not in Hebrew but in Judeo-Arabic, which is the Rambam's primary language of writing. The Rambam lived in the Arabic world. He wrote in almost all of his works not in Hebrew but in Arabic and Hebrew characters, what we like to call today Judeo-Arabic, right? The only works he actually wrote in Hebrew were the Mishnah Torah and certain letters. Depending if someone would write him in Arabic, he would respond in Arabic. If someone wrote him in Hebrew, he would respond. That was someone want to read source number 4 for us, which from a tshuva from the Rambam.
It is written in the Hebrew.
Yeah, that's the Rambam's word for the Mishnah Torah, right? You just called it the Hebrew.
That what he wrote in the Hebrew is correct. So we fixed the errors from Mishnah.
Right. So the Rambam is, this idea that the Rambam changed his mind is not some idea that people came up with after the Rambam's lifetime. The Rambam himself, right, tells us, okay, you have an old edition of my work. I went back and changed it, right? You have the first edition or the first quote unquote published edition, whatever that means, before I changed my mind. And we'll get back. This very case actually will become important next week. But we have, right, a lot of evidence that the Rambam changed his mind. Right? And this is not something new. This is not a new insight of scholars from the 19th and 20th and 20th. Discovery of the manuscripts that comprise what is known as the Cairo Geniza, right? We have a whole different picture of the Rambam. It's not just that we have these final drafts to prepare, which are not final drafts, but first drafts. A first draft of the commentary of the Mishnah on Masechet Shabbat, chapter 2. We'll talk about one small passage from this next week. Right? This is the kind of thing that preserves a very, what is known as quick, fast, in a pretty standard way people would write quickly in his day. But more interesting, right? And in this draft of the Parasha Mishnah, things like this, right? This is a draft. Not only a draft, we also have the Rambam's own copy of the Parasha Mishnah, to which he made a lot of changes, right? Right? And in this text, to the text itself.